You are listening to a free version of the Majority Report with Sam Seder. To support this show and get another 15 minutes of daily program, go to majority.fm, please.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
It is Wednesday, May 12th, 2021. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, senior correspondent and editor-at-large, co-founder of The Intercept, Jeremy Scahill, will be here on the Empire Politician, a half-century of Joe Biden's stances on war. Meanwhile, 43 dead in Gaza, 5 in Israel as fighting escalates. And the Biden administration is reportedly slowing a UN call for a ceasefire. And the ICC sees possible war crimes. Back in Washington, Liz Cheney defiant as the Republicans boot her from their party or leadership because, well, why not? And hilarious or bold marketing push. 100 unnamed Republicans, including some former electeds, vow to maybe split from the Republican Party. I say probably both. Hilarious and a marketing push. Limited study shows 99% of hospitalized COVID patients are unvaccinated. Meanwhile, anti-maskers do an abrupt about face mask. Arizona Republicans pass a law to limit mail-in ballots. U.S. approves of the first large-scale wind farm. This is off of the coast of Cape Cod. But Newsom rolls out $12 billion in a homeless plan, but it is way short on permanent housing. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. Joining me, as always, Emma Vigeland. Hello, Emma.
Hello, Sam.
Good to see you.
Good to see you, too.
Great. There you are. Emma's here. We got a lot to cover today. Obviously, the fighting has escalated in between Israel and Gaza at this point. We did a fairly deep dive yesterday into the both the most proximate cause for this violence and obviously some of the long-standing causes for this violence. Fundamentally, it is about the occupation and the dispossession of one people facing another group of people who have far more power. And a correction on some of the way that I spoke about things yesterday. Somebody pointed this out on Twitter to me, and I thought it was a very legitimate critique. But there is but better to be expressed by Mohammed El-Kurd. He was one of the Palestinians living in East Jerusalem, who is having their homes taken away, and he's being interviewed by CNN International. And here is a response from Mohammed that reframes the way that I was talking about this yesterday. I think it's an important one. This is number one.
Quote, they're coming to finish what they started. Well, Mohammed El-Kurd joins me now from Sheikh Jarrah. Thank you very much for joining us. You grew up in the neighborhood. Your family home is slated for eviction. What is the scene right now?
Well, thank you so much for having me. To start, it's not really an eviction. It's forced ethnic displacement, to be accurate, because an eviction implies legal authority. While the Israeli occupation has no legitimate jurisdiction over the eastern parts of occupied Jerusalem under international law, it also implies the presence of a landlord, and certainly these Israeli settlers have not built our homes. They're not our landlords. They don't own our land. And thirdly, eviction does not imply the hundreds and hundreds of heavily armed police and army and settlers colluding, blowing up your doors, throwing your children from your windows, and using brute force to throw you out in the street and assaulting and arrest you should you resist. It doesn't imply the grenades. It doesn't imply the rubber-coated bullets. It's not an eviction. According to the UN and countless politicians and human rights organizations, it could amount to war crimes. Actually, the situation is pretty tense, I can tell you, and we're very scared of losing our homes to Israeli settler organizations.
These settlers and courts would argue that their claims to the land predates you and your family. Have you been allowed to prove otherwise?
No. The Israeli occupation courts take their documents without verification, without authentication or challenge, whereas our documents will not be looked at. They will not be taken into consideration. Besides, just because something is technically legal does not mean it's ethical or moral or historically just or accurate or correct. We've seen many systems exploit the law and exploit the judiciary to uphold supremacist and racist lives.
You've written very powerfully.
All right. Well, that's the point. Is that we refer to it as evictions, and it really is something far more nefarious. Which is not to say that evictions are not bad in the context of this country, but this is of not just a different magnitude, but of a really qualitatively different. And so,
well, it's ethnic cleansing. And you notice that he said supremacy there, and obviously saying white supremacy in this context is so complicated because, of course, there's an enormous amount of history when it comes to the Jewish people being targeted by white supremacists. And so it's not necessarily applicable here, but at the very least it is systemic racism and ethnic cleansing that comes from that. And so, the framing by that CNN reporter frustrates me because, on the other side, they claim that before you came here, it was their land. And we can go back and back in history all the way to BC. And then who had the land then? Who cares? This was a land that was given to Palestinian people because they were originally displaced, and it was outlined in treaties. That's the end of discussion. And so it's not a both sides argument. There is clear legality, and these are Palestinian homes in Sheikh Jarrah. And it's, and so because of the brute force of the Israeli government, they are able to brutally force the conversation into a both sidesism that actually makes zero sense.
Yeah. I have to say that, I think, this is something that we've seen for ages and ages. And, that's why I was so struck. But I do think that the conversation is changing, particularly around now. I feel like this incident is there is a marked shift in most places. And that's why I saw this, segment with, Jeremy Bash on MSNBC. I guess it was on the Brian Williams show, which I found, to be so, anachronistic in some way. This idea of, we're just going to pretend now that there's really only one entity, essentially, that's playing fight. It's as if there's no dynamic here. There's no relationship. These are not two separate parties. It is as if as if almost one party has just been subjected to just a violent natural disaster in some way. Here is Jeremy Bash defending the Israeli airstrikes, which have killed, I don't know what the tally is now, but probably at least a dozen children. And here is Jeremy Bash.
Well, conflicts like these, Brian, have actually been going on since the early 2000s. And in 2008 and in 2012, Israel fought essentially mini wars against Gaza. And each time what Israel was able to do was destroy enough of the Hamas military infrastructure to buy itself some time, buy itself a couple of years of peace. And now, since Israel has the American-funded Iron Dome system, which the Obama-Biden administration helped fund, Israel has more decision space. And I think the Biden administration has struck exactly the right note tonight by saying they've been talking to their Israeli counterparts. Of course, they're urging common restraint on all sides, but effectively they're giving Israel the time and space that Israel needs to conduct operations to dismantle Hamas's military infrastructure. I talked to someone in the densely populated central Israel area tonight, and they were in the middle of dinner when the air raids went off, and they were sent scurrying for bomb shelters. I mean, this isn't a civilian population that Hamas is indiscriminately attacking. Oh, by the way, Hamas is also hiding their own military infrastructure in hospitals, in kindergartens, in their own residential buildings, forcing Israel into that very difficult situation of having to parse exactly where to strike. But no country, not the United States, not Israel, no country in the world could survive air raids, sirens running all night, and people running into bomb shelters during the dinner hour. This is not what a civilized society should have to put up with. And I think the United States is right tonight to stand with its ally, Israel.
Whoa.
Repugnant. So repugnant. First of all, I want to just note that the words Palestinians never comes out of this guy's mouth.
They don't need dinner. They don't need dinner, Sam. They don't need dinner.
The idea that there are any human beings on the other side of these Israeli operations, as they're called, which are just airstrikes. We know they've killed dozens of people and dozens, and dozens of civilians, I should say. Dozens of civilians, far more civilians than they have said they have killed militants. And yet they have all of this technology. It's the hard decision that they had to make. There is absolutely no recognition of, on one hand, the Palestinians' humanity, and on the other hand, the Israelis are so human that it is really about the idea of disturbing dinner time.
Yeah.
I mean, this dichotomy is just, it's grotesque, but it also feels like it has been taken from a completely different era. Yeah. And, I think this is just not going to resonate in the same way with the American public anymore. I think, and you know, we may touch on this with Jeremy Scahill too, in terms of what the Biden administration is and is not doing. But
on the one hand, just quickly, on the one hand, babies being incinerated in Palestine. On the other hand, dinner being disturbed. Like but the first one isn't necessarily talked about at all.
It really is stunning. I mean, if you're going to do this, it's not. That's the thing. There's no both sides here, right? Like that's it. Like this is a conflict between essentially one civilized nation and a really malignant natural force that has no humanity, essentially, according to Jeremy Bash, and that is it's just incredibly offensive. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking to Jeremy Scahill. Hey, tough to make these segues into these sponsorships. I got to be honest with you, folks.
Yeah,
this stuff is just super disturbing to see it. But with that said, I'm a big fan of Quip. Don't know what to tell you. As you know, I've talked about the toothbrushes in the past. Talked about the flosser, which I have a great love for, but also the gum.
Oh no.
We might have to get Sam back. I'll play a break here briefly, and we can try to add Sam back.
Oh wait, am I back? I dropped.
Now you're back. There you go.
Now you're back.
Sorry about that. Let's try it again. I don't know what is going on with my internet. That's weird. So this is about Quip. I don't know if you caught that, Emma. Are you still there? Yeah. I noticed you look so still before. It's about Quip. And I've talked